where there can be plenty to fight over if you're going through a divorce. Things like the house and the kids.
And who gets the dog? Pet custody disputes sound like something from Hollywood. Mariah Carey and Nick Cannon are currently battling in court over who gets the couple's 8 Jack Russell Terriers. But filing papers over pets is actually a real thing lawyers deal with here in Minnesota. WCCO's Kim Johnson found out who decides who gets Fido.
They may not always be the best at communicating, getting along with others, or sharing, but for most, the family pet is just that.
He's my family.
Ranger is our first son.
So what happens if mom and dad decide to part ways?
There's no written document stating it, but I think if we were to ever split, Ranger would come with me.
I wouldn't give him to anybody till death do us part.
While some couples are ditching their vows made to each other, more are vowing not to ditch their pets. In a survey of divorce lawyers, 25% reported seeing an increase in cases involving pets.
Ordinarily, pets, mainly dogs and cats, although I've seen cases with birds, aquariums, and I've even seen a rattlesnake.
Marshall Tannick is a Minneapolis attorney who specializes in animal law. He says this time of year is particularly busy for pet disputes.
The parties generally want to have the pet in their house during the holidays.
But deciding who gets the fur ball can get a little hairy, even in a court of law.
I've read literally every case in the country on pet law, and I can tell you there is no universal definition on who owns an animal.
Minnesota pet attorney Barbara Gislason says in the eyes of the law, a pet is treated no differently than property.
There is not only no law in Minnesota, there is no law in the country.
But Gislason says judges are starting to take into account emotional bonds between pets and owners and not just focus on who bought the animal and paid the vet bills.
If the animal is closely bonded to one person, the judge may take a look at that. If there's a kid in the family that's closely bonded to the dog or the cat or another pet, the judge may look at that.
If the clawing between couples continues, they can scratch out a custody agreement, much like they would if children are involved.
The simple agreement may be that the parties will exchange or have visitation rights with the pet every other weekend.
Tannick says couples can also avoid a snarly dispute with a pet prenup.
It's not a bad idea to think about having a clause in there as to what happens to the pets.
Bunk, what's this?
Andrea Kay looks at her boyfriend's dog, Bunk, as her own.
I joke that we had a secret adoption ceremony in the middle of the night one day when Wes wasn't there, and that he's now my child as well.
But as a child of divorce herself,
And the dog went back and forth with us in high school.
she's learned pets can get caught in the middle.
I would never get a dog with anyone unless I was married to them.
So she's keeping her relationship with Bunk a ball's throw away, just in case they're not meant to be.
I'd be really bummed, but I think that since we're only dating at this point, it's really still his dog.
In Minnesota, more couples are willing to fight for their pets than surrender them to shelters. The Animal Humane Society says less than 1% of the animals it receives are products of a divorce or breakup. If you're considering a pet custody arrangement, animal trainers say cats are less portable and are better off staying in one home. To make the transition for dogs easiest, keep their routine as best as you can. Even move their dog bed or water bowl from one house to another.
And when we were talking to Chris, we found out that you were familiar with this.
Yes.
Very familiar. When my parents divorced in the early 80s, my mom and dad had joint custody of me and my brother, so we went back and forth every other month. They also fought over the dog, who went back and forth every other month. Here's a look at Poncho. Poncho, who spent a month in Stillwater, then Oak Park Heights, then Stillwater, then Oak Park Heights. And here's a look at Poncho with the lead singer of A Flock of Seagulls. I don't know what he was doing at our Christmas that year, but there he was. I loved Poncho. What a great little Boston Terrier.